Welcome back viewers, ladies, gentlemen, non-binaries and anyone with ears or other sound detection organs. Hope you enjoy. We are continuing with Going Native, written by Uncle Sealing. Going Native, Chapter 42. Askel looked at the paper card in his hand. He was nervous about the call, but he wasn't sure why. It was business. Professional. He punched in the numbers and, after a couple rings, the screen lit up with a video call. Bright Light Hotel, how may I Askel? Where have you been? I've been worried. Nobody has seen you in over a week. Sorry, Jessica. My patient had a bit of an emergency and we had to move to a new facility. That thing at the hospital? With the lockdown? Yeah. It was touch and go for a while. There was an awkward pause while Askel tried to put his thoughts together. He liked Jessica, in a way he had never felt about a girl, but he barely knew her. Still, that wasn't why he called. I was wondering if you could do me another favor. I hate to ask it. Of course. Can you check me out, pack up the stuff in my room, and get it shipped to me? I'll pay for it, but I can't leave right now. No problem. Her voice sounded pleasant and friendly, her entire demeanor calm. Compared to how crazy the last week had been, it was incredibly soothing. Where should I send it? Actually, no, can I guess? I suppose you can. That new military base up in the mountains by Durango. Well shit. How did you know? Askel hoped his nervousness didn't show in his face, but he knew it did. He was too damn easy to read. Her laugh was musical. Denver is full of ex-military. It's all everyone is talking about. Some people are saying they are doing crazy medical experiments on POWs up there. She didn't ask the question, but she didn't have to. No, nothing like that. I'm not quite sure what is going on up here, really, but I'm the only medical person. Something to do with telescopes. He could guess more than that, but it wasn't the sort of thing he should talk about, especially over an Omnipod. There was another silence, but it was comfortable. Familiar. Now that I've checked you out and you're no longer a customer, I have a question for you. Jessica looked suddenly nervous. Was something wrong? What is it? Would you like to get coffee sometime? I split my time between Denver and Albuquerque so I won't be that far away. I would like that very much. Askel didn't even try to hide his grin. You've got a date? That's fan-fa. Great. Stace turned his electric wheelchair with a hum and offered the Helcom a fist bump. What's the lucky boy's name? Jessica. Stace didn't miss a beat. Back when he first started dating Daniel he made the same joke at every opportunity. That girl from the hotel? The Helcom nodded sheepishly. Kind of far, but I'm sure you can make something work. How do you do it? Askel looked pensive. Nervous. He got like this whenever he and Stace talked about relationship stuff. If you want to know the details, the internet is full of videos. I still don't know much about Helcom biology. Stace smirked at the confused young man. That got a distinct dark flush from his friend. No, I mean. I thought I was gay, but I like Jessica. What's wrong with me? That question I can help with. Nothing is wrong with you. You just love who you love. I hadn't thought about being with a guy until I met my husband. Hadn't really thought about being with anyone. Sammy can probably find you what words might work for you, but that never concerned me much. Shouldn't concern you either. That seemed to get the young man to relax. Stace really enjoyed having Askel around, and not just because of the medical care. Stace generally couldn't handle being around people these days and all the soldiers stomping around the place made him uneasy, but Eskel didn't set off the same panicked fight or flight response that seemed to grip Stace whenever he was with someone he didn't know. It was sort of like having a little brother. Of course, his new accommodations helped. Stace had vague memory of lying in a hospital bed in the main building. He had woken up in a full-on crisis, thrashing and flailing, sure that he was in the process of falling to his death. In reality, he was lying on his back with a giant dome screen above him showing a bird's-eye view of the facility. It was so realistic Eskel had to knock him back out. Now he had a bedroom, a living room, a kitchen with dining area, and a full bath all to himself. Aang had ensured it was all tastefully decorated in a human style that fit Stace like a well-loved shirt. Seriously? Don't I look serious? Dilek looked at Ellora. She definitely did not look like she was joking. I thought it was supposed to be for VIPs. I don't give half a crawling fuck about VIPs. Besides, I need that basement cleared out. We're going to have it dug deeper and turned into a bomb shelter. Dilek decided to press her luck. She and Ellora had been getting along okay, and some teasing wasn't out of the question at this point. Are you sure it's not so we can keep an eye on your friend? Ellora's face turned an interesting shade of blue before she answered. That might also be an advantage. All right, I'll tell the girls. They are going to love it, I'm sure. As it turned out, they did. Down the slope from the observatory, perhaps 2 kilometers away, an impressive array of Shilvati workers had been deployed. In a matter of days, they leveled a couple square kilometers and poured some thermoset plastic pads, 2 for landing large shuttles and 1 for the foundation of what everyone had decided to simply call the hotel. The building was 2 stories with 40 rooms, 36 standard and 4 huge suites. Each of the standard rooms was still big enough for a full bath with shower and a kitchenette. The whole thing was prefabricated and modular, so if it needed to be expanded on later on they could just drop another floor on the top or attach more rooms to the sides. On one side of the building was a second section with conference rooms, a pool, and a rather large hot tub. There was also a well-stocked, if small, medical facility and 2 apartments. It was there that Ellora's friend could be found along with his caretaker. That Stace guy was an odd one for sure. He had arrived on the site on a gurney and covered in medical gear. Since then he had improved enough that he could get around on a motorized wheelchair, but he rarely left the medical wing. You could find him out in the hotel hallways on occasion, but aside from that the man was like a ghost. A ghost that had head of security Lieutenant Ellora Helium visiting far more often than was strictly necessary. His caretaker, Eskel, was a Helcom who had managed to successfully rebuff every woman on site. He was polite and tended to the assorted sprained ankles and other injuries that came up among Dilek's security, but aside from that it was like flirting with a brick wall. If Stace was around when that happened, you could expect a terrifying death glare. For being a human, a male, and confined to a wheelchair, he could be pretty scary. So now Dilek's 24-woman assault commando team were basically on vacation. Their patrols were pleasant, if cold, nature hikes, dinner was in an actual restaurant, sometimes served by a pair of adorable males, though more often it was a few of the commandos taking turns, and they each had a private room nicer than some apartments. Occasionally an unauthorized drone with cameras, and once a firebomb, would approach overhead and they would have fun blasting it out of the sky. They even had some mystery in the form of Stace, who looked like he had been on the wrong side of a war. All this place needed were a few more hot guys to spice things up a little and their posting would be perfect. It had been hard to convince the girls to stick it out and put up with a security job instead of proper assault drops, now it was going to be nearly impossible to get them to leave. A single thread of smoke drifted up from the touch of the soldering iron, hanging in the air for an instant before the air scrubber sucked it up. Aang peered through the magnifier and examined his work. Every solder joint on the complicated little board was shiny and perfect. You know, it's amazing how quickly you picked that up. Fantastic job. Samuel was peering through the lens from over Iing's shoulder and took a moment to give him a friendly squeeze from behind. What can I say? I have steady hands. Iing turned his head to lock eyes with Samuel and smiled. With Iing perched on a stool and Samuel standing behind him, they were almost the same height. And you shaved at least a week off our schedule. That's the last board, right? Iing thought about it. It should be, unless Sammy changed the specifications again. Nah, we're past that point. I think now we just have to finish assembly and see what kind of ship we can come up with. Iing leaned backwards into Samuel, who accommodatingly wrapped his arms around the Shilvati. I know we were talking about borrowing a ship from House Chelsa, but if Sammy really is going to be doing physics research here, do you think it might be better for us to buy a ship of our own? Wouldn't that be super expensive? I'm sure I could find a good deal on the used market. Plus, depending on what we find, I should be able to pilot it. I have been doing the Omni classes to upgrade my license. Samuel let out, growling his affirmation into Iing's pointed ear, accompanying it with a puff of air from his nose. Sounds like you've been planning this out. Did you have a ship in mind? I just so hap. There are the lovebirds. Iing let out a squawk and lost his balance on the stool, and after a moment of flailing the pair ended up on the floor. Sammy and Merrin were looking down at the two of them, matching grins on their faces. You know it's not like that. Iing was indignant. If he wasn't sprawled on the floor on top of Samuel, he would almost certainly have been stomping his foot. Merrin and Sammy looked at each other dubiously. It most certainly wasn't like that. Iing would be the first to point it out. We're just snuggle buddies. Samuel was on the bottom of the pile and seemed perfectly content to have Iing lying across him. And tunnel buddies. Sammy grinned and gave Samuel a theatrical wink. That set Samuel off, his pale skin turning red as laughter overtook him, eyes filling with tears. The two Shilvati turned to look at Sammy. From the floor, Sammy's smile seemed to shine down on Iing like the moon. Merrin asked a confused what, and Sammy just raised an eyebrow in response. After a moment, Iing went pale. I get it. Oh. Merrin's grin was a twin of Sammy's, and Iing couldn't help but free a small smile of his own. His relationship with the two humans known by most of the people at the facility as the Sams was odd, to say the least. It was normal in a proper Shilvati relationship for Iing to spend some nights with his wife and some with his girlfriend. Usually the two would alternate or work out some other arrangement. If the household was more modern, Iing might have more say in the matter. Traditionally, it was more up to the wives. Except now sometimes when he was spending time with Ellora, Merrin was across the hall engaging in what could only be described as a sex marathon. It honestly left Iing feeling a little inadequate. He felt like he should be more upset about it than he was, then felt guilty for not being upset enough. The problem, if you could call it that, was that he liked the humans. Sammy was rambunctious like a child but still as sharp as a razor, and Samuel was, well, if you took everything that went into a relationship and cut out the actual sexual feelings, that was what Iing felt for Samuel. The other two were constantly teasing, acting like it was a will they won't they Omni drama just because the pair liked to cuddle together. Samuel was comfortable. Then there was Stace. Iing was certain all the way down to his toes that he loved the odd, slightly misanthropic human. He enjoyed every moment they spent together, whether it was snuggled up on his bed or just sitting by that little fake fireplace and chatting about nothing. Unlike with Samuel, though, he did feel that carnal yearning. It was an itch that Iing simply could not scratch. He wanted to take Stace, to possess that man and keep him safe and happy and completely blissed out and at his mercy. It was strange and, to him, very unnerving-like. Thankfully, things were about to change. It took an incredibly awkward conversation with Eskil, but he had gotten the all clear. As long as Ian didn't take things too far, tonight he would finally get to be with his boyfriend again. Eskil sat on his bed with his back against the wall, entire body flushed, quietly panting. He shouldn't have been listening in, really shouldn't have been joining in like he had, but their bedrooms shared a wall and things had gotten loud in Stace's room. After Ian had asked if Stace was able to handle some physical intimacy, Eskil had given tentative approval. He was expecting something romantic, something sweet, not whatever the hell that was. He wasn't quite able to tell the noises apart with certainty, but after a few of the sounds Stace made, it was important that, as Stace's nurse, the Helcom should stay up and be ready in case something bad happened. It was a flimsy excuse, but, hey, it was an excuse. Eskil wasn't a virgin. He had found himself infatuated with one of the other nurses at his first hospital job and, after some terrifyingly tentative passes, it turned out the man was willing to give it a try. They had a fumbling, unfulfilling experience, but Eskil saw promise there, a little ember that, with work, could turn into a real loving relationship. All the manga and relationship guides he devoured greedily from Earth had laid down a foundation for how the whole thing was supposed to work. Only the other man hadn't felt the same way. He thought it had been a mistake, and, when Eskil asked for a second date, he went to the hospital administrators and said Eskil was harassing him. He was branded a pervert, lost his job, and ended up living with parents who couldn't even stand to look at him but would keep him warm and fed out of a sense of familial duty. After almost a year of misery, he saw the job posting. A private nursing position on Earth, specifically looking for someone who could work one-on-one with humans. It was the perfect chance, and, after he offered to do it for essentially slave wages, he was the perfect candidate. Eskil had only ever seen relationships two ways. There was the way of his people, of his ancestors, where men were surrounded by women, passed around like toys, and the human way, this one-on-one monogamy thing that ran so counter to everything Eskil had been taught. Now he was looking at the relationship between Stace, Ian, Elora, Merrin, Sam, and the other Sam. It was crazy on its face. 3 males, 2 females, and 1 miscellaneous. Eskil still hadn't figured that one out, but should probably ask at some point, in a bizarre web of friendships and love and lust. They seemed to be doing whatever suited them. In fact, he was pretty sure Ian tried to murder Stace with his dick at one point this evening. That undoubtedly weird relationship, though, there was something mesmerizing about it. It had a solid foundation, and from the outside Eskil had been able to see how each person seemed to complement each other. They filled each other's gaps. Oh well, this wasn't the night for relationship introspection. Eskil took a pillow and carefully wrapped his leather jacket around it. Clicking the heater on, he climbed into bed and snuggled it tight. He just hoped for pleasant and fulfilling dreams. He did turn out to have pleasant dreams, for about 6 hours. Then noises from the other side of the wall woke him up. Apparently, Ian was a squeaker, and a loud one. End of chapter. If you enjoyed, like, subscribe, click the bell so you don't miss any episode, and do all the other YouTube stuff. Visit and support the author, and I'll see you next time. If you didn't enjoy, comment on what I can do better. And as usual, have a wonderful day.